a story time of the worst ever person I ever dated. He was literally the spawn of Satan, so strap in. Let's call said person Mark. His name will be Mark. I'm gonna set the scene for you as I always do. I had just gotten out of a relationship where I was really happy. Like, I really liked the guy and I didn't feel like I was gonna fall in love with anyone else. Like, I'd gone on other dates and I was like, no one is clicking. Like, I'm not into anyone else. Mind you, I was also in 12th grade. So at this time, like, everything is so romantic and dramatic. Like, I'm never gonna love anyone else but this person. I meet Mark and he's like a 6'5" basketball player who has like nice clothes. He's really funny and he's attractive. As soon as he meets me, he's very keen on getting to know me. Like, he's trying to take pictures with me. Like, he's being very flirty with me and making it very known that he likes me. So I was like, okay, This was right around Valentine's Day when I met him. And honestly, I had 4 Valentines that year. So I was trying to just kind of keep them apart from each other. After barely interacting with this kid, like on Valentine's Day at school, he comes up with a teddy bear and like chocolates and like hands it to me at school. And I was like, it takes some balls to do that in front of people. And like, I don't even know really who you are. So from that moment forward, my little pea brain was like, oh my God, he has such balls. Like, I'm in love. Period. I want to date him. Start hanging out with him. And at that time, my game plan was always like, hang out with them for weeks and not let them get any. And then they're going to be like obsessed with you. Like, that was my game plan. I have like a week-long sleepover at his house and he lives with like his teacher, which immediately I thought was kind of weird. I'm like, why do you live with your teacher? Like, did you get kicked out of your house? And indeed he did. He got kicked out of his house because he like snuck someone in and it was like this crazy situation. And his math teacher took him in, which I thought was kind of like, wait. Mind you, the first time I ever go to his house, I realized that I went to a giant New Year's Eve party at his house before, not knowing it was his house, and also not knowing that it wasn't his house, it was his teacher's house. So I asked him about it. I'm like, I've come here before. Like, I came to a giant party here. And he's like, oh yeah, like my teacher was like out of town. So like I threw a party and we just cleaned it up before they got home. Just kind of like, okay, noted. Like, you have very little respect for people. Obviously this wasn't enough to scare me off because honestly things moved so fast after that. Like, we were like this up each other's ass all day, every day. Sneaking to his house, he was showing me like every bit of affection. Like, there was not a single red flag other than the one that I just told you about. One day I decided to have my best friend come sleep over with us because like he had an extra bed and I was like, okay, it'll be fun. Like, we'll all hang out. No, it wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun night. At this time, my friend Kelly has like a deep love for Four Loko. Like, she's like Four Loco'd out. She's chilling on the bed. Like, she's just on her phone talking to her man and we're just chatting, doing our own thing. I finally decide after like 2 months of talking to this guy, like, this is the night. We're gonna get freaky. Like, he's gonna be so obsessed with me after, like, blah, 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 blah. We go in the other room and we're like hanging out in there because obviously I'm not gonna do that in front of my friend. That's mad weird. So I get a text from my girlfriend, Kelly, who's in the other room, and she's like, oh my God, come in here now. I go in there and she's like, he just came in here with his out and showed me it. Honestly, I think she's lying to me. Like, I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure he did. He probably accidentally walked in the wrong room. So I'm just like, I don't think he meant it that way. And I like walk out. Oh no, he meant it that way. Oh no, he meant it that way. Doing the deed, and honestly, it is the most awkward thing I've ever done in my life. Like, it was so awkward. He kept telling me that like he doesn't finish from like doing it and like just very weird mid awkward, not good. Honestly, even this wasn't a red flag for me. I'm like, okay, some people just aren't that great at it. Like, he'll learn. We end up having like a nice night after that. Everything's cool and chill. We're like vibing, and then I go home that day. For some reason, he texts me and he's like, oh, go on my Snapchat and like post a picture of yourself. Like, I want you to post about yourself because some girl is like trying to message me. Again, in my little pea brain, like, this is like a green flag. Like, what? You want me to log into your Snapchat? Like, of course, what's the login? You're not gonna give me your login to your Snapchat and expect me not to like go through things. So like, I'm gonna go through things, babe. He sends me the information and I log in and I'm just like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go through a few things, like, obviously. And you know how when you're on Snapchat and you like scroll up, like those are all the pictures you've saved from Snapchat. I scroll up and the first thing I see is him having intercourse with another girl 30 minutes ago. 30 minutes ago. I do not recognize this girl. Like, she has long black hair. Like, there's no one at my school that even remotely looks like her. So I'm like, what is this? Like, who is this? I text him flipping out. I'm like, who the fuck is this? Like, what is going on? Like, you're such a scum. Like, he calls me and tells me this. She is just my friend. She came over because I wanted to talk about if I was gonna be with you for the rest of my life. He proceeds to tell me that he was only hanging out with her so that they could talk about how much he loves me. I really hope you weren't telling her how much you love me while she was on top of you in your bathroom, but okay. Poor thing. That would be really weird. I'm not stupid, so I just block him and I'm just like, you know what? I was reluctant to even be with him in the first place. Like, I'm still in love with my ex. I don't even care about this that much. Next day I go into school and I'm not expecting it to be awkward, honestly, because we don't have any classes together. Like, it shouldn't be awkward. I was very rarely seeing him in the school anyway. Well, he comes up to me sobbing his eyes out and begging for me back and being so fucking weird. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, it wasn't like that. I'm just like, did you do it or not? Did you do it or not? Finally, he's like, yeah, I slept with her. And I'm like, okay, literally don't speak to me ever again, duh. I can't say what I said on TikTok because I'll probably get banned, but I start screaming some foul things at him, and a teacher comes out, and because of this, like, he gets even more worked up, and he starts screaming at me that he's going to whoop my ass, and then starts telling people that he slapped me in the face and, like, spreads a rumor that, like, he beat me up. Like, don't you not want that to be a rumor? Mind you, people who know me from school are, like, coming up to me like, did Mark really slap you in the face? I'm like, no! He ends up making, like, 3 fake numbers to message me off to tell me how sorry he is and, like, how he just wants to be with me and I'm the love of his life. And it took me about 2 days to just go back to my ex. Like, I really didn't care. I, like, couldn't go to school for 2 weeks because I was scared I was gonna get beat up by a 6'5" man. And now I think he's in jail.
Okay, so this is going to be a story time on how I got pregnant, I guess. This is a pretty crazy story, and it gets kind of confusing, so... Okay, so I was 16 when I got pregnant. I was in 11th grade, so was my boyfriend. We're a day apart, so we were in the same grade. Okay, so I had gotten in trouble. I was basically grounded, couldn't see him for a little bit, so we decided to skip school one day so that we could see each other. That one day turned into 63 days of us skipping school. And it wasn't, like, planned. Like, the first day was, but the second day we just, like, did it. And then, like, we just did it again. And then we just did it again. Like, I don't know. Usually my dad would get notifications when I was absent from school, but he didn't. So the whole time he had no idea. So the day that I got caught skipping, I went to my boyfriend's car, and he would come to the school, pick me up from the school, and we would go to his house. And so I went to his car, and this lady stopped me and was like, where are you going? What are you doing? I was like, I'm just giving my boyfriend a pair of shorts in his car. I'll be right back. She was like, okay, make sure you come back. I did not. Me and my boyfriend left, even though I felt super weird. I felt like something was off. I shouldn't have gone. Like, I felt weird. We left anyway. Well, we get to his house and, you know, do the thing. And then literally like 5 minutes after that, I hear a door slam in his driveway. And I was like, who is here? And he looks out of the blinds and was like, oh my God, it's your dad. The school finally caught me skipping. I skipped for 63 days, but they never caught me because I would always hide my face on the cameras. And like, I didn't get unenrolled because I would randomly show up for like 1 or 2 class periods every day, just at the end of the day, so that when I went home, my grandma was picking me up. She thought I went to school, but I really wasn't. But anyway, he was like, oh my God, that's your dad. And the school had called my dad and was like, your daughter's skipping. She left in this kind of car. And my dad was like, oh, that's her boyfriend. So he knew to come to his house. Well, when he got to his house, I was literally freaking out. Like, I was freaking out. So I'm like, well, we got to go down there. So me and my boyfriend go down there. And my dad is literally like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't even know what's happening right now. So then my dad and my boyfriend start arguing on the porch. And I was just like, oh my God, could this day literally just get any worse? But it did. He took me back to school and we had a meeting with the principal, the police officer that was there, and like one of the administrators. And they basically told him how long I'd skipped and how I was leaving and how they couldn't catch me for so long. And then me and Cohen were not allowed to see each other, talk to each other, obviously, because of what we did. Well, then about 2 weeks goes by and I don't get my period. Come to find out, I was pregnant. But everything worked out in the end and we're great now, so... Okay, first thing, how did my parents react? I did not tell my dad when I found out I was pregnant. I went and told my grandma because I was scared to tell my dad, obviously. She told my dad for me. Like, she dropped me off at work after I confirmed that I was pregnant at a doctor's office the same day. And then she told my dad while I was at work. And my dad was the one that picked me up from work. So when he picked me up from work, I was like scared and nervous. And I came out of the place I was working and I was crying because I was nervous. And my dad was just standing in front of his truck. And he was like, look, I'm not mad at you. Things happen. I want to help you through this. I'm not going to give you hell for this because there's no reason to. The damage is already done. And I was like, wow, I was not expecting you to react this way. And then I don't have the best relationship with my mom. So when I was like a couple months along, I just kind of like texted her like pictures of the ultrasound. And she was like, oh my God, what the fuck? And I was like, yeah. And other people are asking how like the principal's office went. Basically they just took us in a conference room, and I meant to say resource officer in the last video, not police officer. Police were not involved, by the way. It was not that serious, but it was still pretty fucking serious. Anyway, we were in the conference room and we're like all sitting at a table, and the administrator is like showing on the smart board like how many days I've skipped school and explaining why they couldn't catch me, which, be fucking for real, y'all literally could have fucking caught me because I walked the same way every single fucking day at like around the same fucking time. Like, come on, y'all for real could have caught me 63 fucking days, and y'all are gonna be like, we couldn't catch you because we could see your face on the cameras. Y'all literally could have had like 3 people standing in the way that I walked, and y'all could have caught me easily. Like, they said that they had watched me on the cameras every single day. They would watch me leave. But like, why wasn't anyone there to stop me if they wanted me to stop? Which I shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. I know what I did is wrong. Like, I've accepted that. I know what I did is wrong. And I'm not promoting teen pregnancy. Like, I'm not promoting teen pregnancy. Do not get pregnant as a teenager, or do not get pregnant if you're not ready, because it is hard. And other comments were asking about my boyfriend and if we're still together, and about him and my dad. We're still together. We've been together for almost 3 years. We live together. Him and my dad have a great relationship. My dad's kind of always wanted a son, and I'm his only daughter, so they kind of do guy stuff, I guess. I don't fucking know. Talk about guy stuff that I have fucking no clue about. But they're great with each other, and everything is fine now. This happened in May of 2021. Just to clarify, like, this was 2 years ago. And obviously, yes, I did keep the baby. He'll be 1 on Saturday, so there you go.
I have probably one of the most traumatizing influencer stories, and I'm finally ready to actually talk about it. If you are a person of color who is trying to be an influencer, if you are an influencer, if you support anyone who is a person of color who is an influencer, this video is definitely for you. What was promised to be a free trip to Mexico with free accommodation, free meals, turned out to be the most traumatic thing that I have ever experienced, probably in my life. I had been mutuals with the girl who invited me on this trip to Tulum for maybe like 2 years. You guys know that I've lived all around the world, but this was the first trip that I was going to take out of the country by myself. This trip was going to be me and 5 other influencers in Tulum for a week and a half. A lot of people know that I suffer with social anxiety, and I'm going to be real. This trip is what has made my social anxiety as bad as it is today. I just decided to be really honest with the girl who invited me on this trip. I texted her and I told her that I have a lot of anxiety about everything because I don't know the other people who are going on the trip, and I just expressed my discomfort, and I basically asked her to not leave me alone at any point in time on this trip. And she told me that everyone that was going was really, really nice, and she gave me like a brief little introduction to everyone who was going to be there, and the flight was pretty straightforward. But when I got to the resort that we were staying at, the vibe was weird. Have you ever been in a situation where everyone is acting really, really weird, but they kind of just gaslight you into thinking that like you're the one that like thinks everything is weird and everything is normal? Because that's what this entire trip was for me. I was nervous, but I'm also a very talkative and outgoing person when I'm comfortable, and when I approached everyone, I could just tell that no one really wanted me to be there. Out of all the other influencers invited, I had the least amount of followers. Body type wise, I was the biggest out of all of the ladies, and there were 2 other people of color on that trip, but I was the only one out of all of them that was a dark-skinned person of color. And usually all of these things, it's like the last thing that's on my mind, but I felt like I was being forced to like see the differences between me and the rest of these people. The initial conversations that everyone was having was so weird and so unrelatable to me. It made me feel so uncomfortable. They spent a good long time showing each other the designer bags they had brought on this trip, which I did not relate to, so I just sat quietly. After that, I started noticing that I was being like intentionally excluded from conversations, and not only that, I was also being excluded literally from people's Instagram stories that they were filming on the trip. There were so many Instagram stories like this. That's me over there, completely cut off in the photo. I was just not included. I was not tagged. I was just not welcomed there at all. So much of the time was spent talking about the amount of money that they made as influencers, the amount of thousands and thousands of dollars they made on a single campaign, which, listen, it's fine if you're comfortable sharing that, but like the way that it was spoken about, it was just like people trying to flex on each other. They would talk about their Facetune tricks and how they would change what their bodies looked like, and everyone was like, wow, you're so good at that. Which now looking back at it, I'm like, what? The girl who set up this trip, her boyfriend was the photographer, and it was his aunt's company who sponsored this trip for everyone. So every day we would take some time out of our day to shoot with some of the skincare products that his aunt had made. So once we finished shooting the products, we were able to have our own time with the photographer to shoot whatever we wanted. It was then I started to realize that everybody else was getting called to do like their own solo photos, and I was being completely just left in the dust. And actually at the end of the trip, when I compared the amount of photos that I had in my Dropbox folder compared to everybody else's, it was insane. And it wasn't like I wasn't asking. I was constantly asking. One of the resorts we were staying at had a huge bar, and I made it really clear that I had no experience with drinking. I had never taken a shot. I had just turned 21. So people were very aware of this. Coming from a brown family, I just genuinely did not understand what the amount of drinks that they were giving me and the shots that I was doing was gonna do to me. But they were like, you have to take your first shot with us, blah, blah, blah. And so I just felt pressured, and I gave in, I did it. The next morning, I woke up completely alone in my room, covered in vomit. I have no idea how I got there. I was completely blacked out. And from that day, I have never gotten drunk because it was genuinely the most terrifying and traumatizing thing that has ever happened to me. No one came to check on me in the morning. And in fact, for the rest of the trip, every single time alcohol was ever brought up, they were like, oh, don't give any to Cass. I genuinely just felt so afraid after that day that I was silent. I didn't talk very much, and I just kind of kept to myself. As the trip went on, I started noticing that I had absolutely nothing to post while people were posting multiple photo shoot pictures every single day. I decided to finally confront the girl who invited me, and I asked her why her boyfriend wasn't making time to take pictures of me that I wanted him to take. He was constantly calling all the other girls because he had a vision. He wanted them to shoot in the water. He wanted them to shoot on the beach chairs. He was very enthusiastic to shoot with everyone else except for me. What she said to me was genuinely one of the worst things that anyone, I think, has ever said to me. With absolutely no hesitation said, oh, I'm sorry. I think you might just not fit his mood board. I didn't even have the presence of mind to be angry. I immediately felt tears welling up in my eyes. Everything just felt so confirmed to me that my gut feelings were right. I don't know why I was surprised, because this photographer, 95% of the people that he shoots are skinny white women. We can honestly bump it up to 98%. And that is when I realized that I was the token dark-skinned person of color on this trip. I was not really there for any other reason than to be there. I was the dark skin representation. I was a different body type than everyone. And at the end of the day, it wasn't really that important. I made an excuse to leave as quickly as I could, and I ran to my room and I just sobbed. I felt so ugly. I felt so incredibly stupid for saying yes to even going on this trip. I had been so open about my eating disorder just amongst those people just because I thought that some vulnerability would maybe open up some type of conversation that I could have with anyone there. I decided I was going to go to one of the other girls on the trip. She was East Asian, and I thought that, out of everyone there, at least she would understand to some extent what I was going through. I felt like she had been a little cold to me the entire trip, but I just genuinely did not have any other options. I found her and I asked her if I could talk to her about something, and I could tell she was kind of just like, what
what is this? And so it was very difficult for me to talk about it with her. I cried a lot. And after I was done telling her, she was quiet for a little while. And then she said, that is absolutely unacceptable, which it just made my heart jump into my stomach. I was so happy that someone understood that what had happened wasn't okay. She told me that she was going to go talk to them and explain what they did wrong, and then she was going to come get me and we were all going to discuss it, which I honestly did not want to do. After it all happened, I realized I was so valid in not wanting to do it because they gaslit me the entire time we discussed it. They told me that I completely understood what they had said wrong, and I was very clear. I told them I know what a mood board is. I've been on several myself. There was really nothing to misunderstand. I was being excluded because I didn't fit their mood board. After we came to whatever understanding, the girl that I had asked to help me took some photos of me. It was very kind of her. I will insert one. Yes. And then the rest of the trip was okay until the end. When it was finally time to go back home, I was so ready to go home. I felt so uncomfortable with everyone there. The last day of our trip, everyone kind of comes in a circle and they say that there is an announcement to be made. The photographer announced that he was really sorry, but someone on our trip was going to have to make a additional stop out of the way on our journey back home to LA. And I knew that it was going to be me. And of course, it was me. I don't know what exactly could have happened for it to have been my ticket, but for some insight, I lived in San Diego at this time. Every single other person there lived in Los Angeles. We were flying into Los Angeles. All they had to do was get there and take an Uber home. I had to get there, and I had to rent a car, and I had to drive 2.5 hours to come back home. So now I had a 3-hour layover, and I also had to rent a car, and I had to drive back to San Diego. I arrived back home at 1 a.m. Everybody got home way earlier than I did. 5 hours earlier than I did. Initially, when he told me about this, he told me that when we were at the airport, he would find a way to fix this so I wouldn't have to fly alone and I wouldn't have to get home at an insane hour of the night. When we got to the airport, the airline informed us that it would be $300 to switch me on the same flight as everyone else, and without any hesitation, he refused immediately. I did not have $300. I was a college student. I only agreed to go on this trip because everything was going to be free, and I just felt trapped. I took my bags and I walked alone and I sat alone. I didn't sit with them because I just genuinely could not stand being around those people anymore. I called my parents crying. I was having a panic attack. I could not handle it. It was too much for me to handle. And then I see him walking towards me with his arms out trying to give me a hug. And I said no. And he was upset that I didn't want to give him a hug. And then he asked me if I wanted him to pay the $300 after I had gotten my tickets, after I had checked my bags. And I was like, no, it's way too late now for this to happen. Way too late. I should have mentioned this earlier, but the girl that invited me and her boyfriend, who was the photographer, they own a company that kind of took us on this trip. And the fact that they didn't spare $300 to make sure that someone who they had deeply hurt on this trip felt at least a little bit comfortable, at least going home, was genuinely shocking, but not surprising to me. The layover was terrible. My laptop got stolen. Thankfully, they found the person that stole it. It was just, the whole thing was just such a terrible experience. After I came home, I was just thoroughly traumatized. I was not the same person, and I'm still not the same person that I was from before I went on that trip. I've only told you maybe like 20% of what I went through. It was genuinely so traumatizing. I have been in therapy discussing what has happened on that trip and how it made me feel for years, and this is the first time that I've been able to actually talk about it without completely breaking down. Even though I kept their identities anonymous when I spoke about this on my Instagram, people eventually found out who they were, and they obviously confronted the two of them for how they treated me. I got 2 very long text messages from the both of them apologizing and, again, gaslighting me and telling me that what I had explained was not what had happened when it absolutely 100% was. Other people were there to see it. They didn't respond to either of their apologies because it was genuinely just embarrassing. And what was even worse is that the apology that they publicly put out on their social media platforms was a copied and pasted version of what they texted me. They couldn't even be bothered to write their own apology. After I released this video, so many people came forward and told me that they had had similar terrible experiences with them. It is so genuinely insane that I have made friends, I have made connections that I still have to this day because we bonded over having a bad experience with the same people. I learned what the true reality of being an influencer who isn't white was so clearly on that trip. I had a couple of my Indian mutuals on Instagram reach out to me telling me that these people had messaged them asking if they could work together, which was a very insane way to do damage control. I went through the people they were following and I found out that they had just followed a bunch of Indian women that I followed, which was just genuinely so disappointing because it would have been so nice to see some sort of character growth, but like it was just not there. I find it extremely difficult to make friends. I find it extremely difficult to trust people because of this experience. And being an influencer after that experience completely changed for me. I see things so differently now, and my standards have completely risen now when I am asked to do really anything. I will not be the token Indian person, I will not be the token person of color, and I will not be the token person of color with dark skin and a varying body type. I am first and foremost myself. I deserve to be respected. I am not posting this video for anyone to be attacked. I solely just want to share my experience with what is the reality of being an influencer who is also a person of color. Please be careful about the jobs that you accept. Please be careful about the people that you surround yourself with, because after this instance, even though I shared my story about these people, so many of the people that I thought were my friends continued to stay friends with them, and it was heartbreaking. I am not just a face on a mood board. I am a human being.
Okay, quick story time on the time that I broke up with my boyfriend because my horoscope told me to. I think a lot of people have done this. I feel like I've seen story time similar to this, but yeah, I'm a little bit nuts. At the time of this, I was working at Zoomtan and I was like really into my horoscope. I had just found out like what my moon sign was and my rising sign, and it became my whole personality. I have a Libra moon and a Scorpio rising, and so does my sister, which is so weird. I had been going through like a really rough patch, honestly, and my job was going so terribly. Like, I hated my job. It was the worst job ever. We were going through a rough patch because we were living in different cities, so we were doing the long distance thing and it just wasn't like doing us any justice. I was working at this shitty ass Zoomtan. Zoomtan is like this tanning bed place where I live, and like I don't even tan. I definitely did use the free spray tan while I worked there though, because that was amazing. Now I just self tan because I'm not spending $40 on a mildly problematic spray tan that also is shitty and orange. Anyways, I was going through like a really bad body dysmorphia phase, and I was wearing sports bras with every outfit. Like, I've always been that way. I've never wanted to look like I had big boobies. My manager literally texted me saying like, you need to start wearing real bras to work because your sports bra's been like showing, like peeking through your shirt. And I got the text and I'm reading and I'm like, there's no way this manager is like telling me what undergarments to wear. When I get this text, I'm with my friend Kelly, and me and Kelly are like the worst influences on each other. Like, we just run rampant when we're together. Read the text to my friend Kelly and she's like, that's not even legal. Like, how are they telling you? That's like sexual harassment. As we're talking about it, as I'm reading it, I get like a little notification from my horoscope app that I had that said something like, the job and people in your life are holding you back, let go of them. Something along those lines, and I was like, OMG. Like, no way. This sparked an immediate conversation with my best friend Kelly, and I'm telling her about my Libra moon and how I'm like so independent and like I don't need any of this because I have a Libra moon. And she looks at me and she's like, go quit right now. Give them your keys right now. And I'm like, I'm giving them my keys right now. So we literally immediately drive to my job and I hand them my keys, curse them out, and leave. But I had to take it one step farther. I'm like, you know what? It said relationships too. So I like urgently text my boyfriend at the time, God bless his heart, and tell him like, we're done. This isn't working. With very little to no explanation other than the fact that I'm a Libra babe. Like, imagine that, please, for a second. Your girlfriend breaks up with you because she has a Libra moon. Please, imagine it. This is like a consistent trend in my life. Like, I heard something at church once that told me I needed to break up with my boyfriend, and I did it. Different boyfriend, different time, but still did it. I've never claimed to be, like, normal. Like, I am nuts. Okay?